everybody. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to Navigating the Course to College, MEFA's podcast. My name is Jonathan Hughes. I'm the Assistant Director of College Planning and Education at MEFA, as always. And with me is
Jonathan Sparling. Hi, everyone. Associate Director of College Planning and Education at MEFA.
Nice title. Well, on today's show, which is all about the U.Plan, we'll be talking to a U.Plan customer, and she can tell us all how she saved and used her U.Plan. And the reason that we're talking about the U.Plan today is because the U.Plan enrollment period ends July 15th, and we'll talk more about what that means in the U.Plan segment. We'll answer some questions from the mailbag, of course. But first, as always, we're going to have some news. As we know, lots of news coming out these days about what everyone's doing for the fall. And so, Jonathan, what's been going on?
As we record this right now, today is July 2nd. And so with the start of July, traditionally, a lot of colleges will send bills for the upcoming fall semester. And so we are seeing that same timeline this year. Despite everything that has happened, colleges, by and large, are sticking to sending out the bills this time of the year. And so because of that, obviously, before bills go out, colleges needed to make decisions about what the fall semester was going to look like. Were they going to be fully on campus? Were they going to be fully remote? Or were they going to be some type of hybrid? And so just in the past couple of days, we have seen a lot of colleges, both locally and nationally, come out with concrete plans of what they are planning to do. By and large, the trend that we're seeing is colleges are planning to have students on campus if they can, while following strict social distancing guidelines, implementation of testing. They are thinking about ways to socially distance in classrooms. Residence halls are going to be reworked. So schools are planning to do that by and large, with the understanding that not only will social distancing be in place, but also testing. And so just yesterday, for example, Worcester Polytech Institute indicated that they will be welcoming students back to campus, but that there will be strict testing involved. Every student will be tested along with faculty and staff. And that won't just be a one-time effort, it will be multiple times. Now, what's interesting is the schools that are mentioning that students will come back, primarily be on campus, they are leaving the option on the table for students to attend class virtually. Again, most are that are saying, we'll welcome you back to campus, you can come here, there's going to be some social distancing, some testing, but if you do not feel comfortable going into class, we're going to have a way for you to view those lectures virtually or still take part in the classroom participation. So we are seeing, a lot of colleges say that, the hybrid model. We are seeing some mention that they are going to err on the side of doing most classes virtually. UMass, for instance, UMass Amherst announced on Monday of this week, I believe, that they are planning to do almost all classes virtually. But what's interesting about their decision is they also mentioned that students will be welcome back on campus if they would like to live in the residence halls, but again, they will have to adhere by social distancing guidelines. So to say it mildly, it's a mixed bag for sure.
I wonder if the current spike in the COVID numbers in different parts of the country will affect those plans at all. We'll see, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's something to keep an eye on, and certainly colleges will keep an eye on and continue to monitor that situation.
Yeah. So what else is going on? Something about new loan rates, is that right?
Yes, new loan rates. I have the MEFA shirt on today. I'll show you here.
Nice. Now, yes, I don't have one of those. How do you have one of those shirts and I don't?
Well, now it's strange that you don't have. How long have you been at MEFA?
Let's see. since George W. Bush was president when I was, and it was like early days of George W. Bush. No, I mean, maybe I did, and it's gone to history now, but.
That's crazy. So I've only been here 2 years and I have one. So I don't know, Jonathan.
I
don't
know.
know. No, I'm just kidding. So no, yeah, we got these shirts as part of a national conference that we went to. So I'm sure we can get you a shirt now.
Okay.
When this pod episode
when
this pod episode goes national and folks hear about it, they're like, we're gonna get Jonathan a shirt. So that's where we got it from. But anyways, yes. So new rates were announced at MEFA for the upcoming lending season. Very happy to announce that this year rates are lower than they were last year. And so on the immediate repay 10-year, the low end of the interest rate was 3.95. This year it's going to be 3.75%, which is great. And what's really great is not only is that lower low, but the bands have been condensed. And so last year, of course, we only do fixed rate interest rate loans, but when folks were approved for a loan, they would, depending on the repayment plan, the rates were anywhere from a 3.95 up until I think like a 7.3, 7.4. The upcoming year, again, it's that low of 3.75, but the high on the interest rate that you would be subject to is 5.5%, depending on the type of repayment plan. So really great options for families, for folks that do need to borrow. Certainly, as we always say, you're maximizing free money first. You're paying what you can out of pocket. You're paying in those 529s or these U-Plans funds. And you're borrowing the federal loans first. But if you do need to borrow, certainly it's great that we're able to offer some really great rates to students and families at really competitive prices. So encourage you to go to MEFA.org if this is something that you do need to research. And if this is something you are considering, you'll see our new loan rates. And if you are considering a loan, definitely check out the loan calculator that we have, which does a really great job breaking down what your payments would look like. So good news on the rates for sure.
Yeah, well said. Thank you. And then one final item of news here. There's some news on the SAT standardized test, the SAT and ACT.
We're seeing more and more schools announce that they will either be test optional or not considering SATs or ACT scores for the upcoming class of 2021. We've been noticing this trend for a while. There are a lot of schools that have gone test optional, and certainly the coronavirus pandemic has kind of reshifted priorities, and we know that many students aren't able to get to a testing center. We know that tests themselves aren't being offered as often as they had in the past. And so more and more schools are moving in this direction of going test optional. Whether those schools that have done this temporarily because of the coronavirus stay is yet to be seen. I would imagine that some will go back, once things we're able to be more in person and tests are being offered more frequently. Some schools may go back and make that a larger part of their admission criteria, but I would venture to guess that some that are doing it temporarily will make it a permanent change.
Good to know. All right, well, that about does it for the news. And I think what we're going to do now is go ahead to our next segment, which is to open up the mailbag and go over some questions that we've been receiving, either through emails, through one-on-one conversations that we've had with folks, from phone calls. So our first question comes from Riz. And Riz writes, I would like your assistance in researching scholarships. Can you recommend websites or other resources? So it's a bit of a softball, admittedly, but I think it's a good opportunity to talk about some ways that people can research scholarships. And one of the first thing that I always say about scholarships, and I'm typically talking to high school seniors or high school students, I'll say, We recommend a two-track approach, that is, when looking for scholarships. For local scholarships, talk with your high school guidance counselor. They have the best resources on local businesses and organizations offering scholarships. For national scholarships, there are a number of scholarship search engines that you could visit, and we're always careful to say that you should never pay to have a scholarship search done. So we recommend some websites, some search engines on our site. Chief among them probably MEFAPathway.org, which is our college and career portal where students can go and search scholarships. And you can start searching for scholarships as early as your freshman year of high school. It's another thing that people don't always realize, but that's the truth. We also mentioned some other sites, fastweb.com, goodcall.com, and one final piece of news is that if you follow us on social, follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, we're constantly being notified from organizations that offer scholarships about their scholarships and want our help in promoting them. And we're always doing that, sort of posting about scholarships that are available for folks to apply to. So hopefully that answers the question. Do you have any other tidbits to add to that, Jonathan?
Yeah, I think that's great. Just, two other things I'm thinking. One is an additional site, goingmerry.com, another scholarship search engine to just look at. And then in terms of kind of like general tips, the one tip I always give to students is, when you're searching for scholarships, right, remember that if you see one for like 5,000, 10,000, 15,000, so does everyone else, right? And so there's probably going to be a lot of applicants for the high dollar ones. So not saying don't apply for those, but just remember that, some of the smaller ones, the 250, the 500, the 750, can add up quickly as well. And so, don't ignore those completely. I'll never forget when I worked in financial aid at WPI, I would consistently see students come in with multiple outside scholarships. And this one student, I remember we had it was very paper. So folks would write down their outside scholarships. And one student came in and it was, I believe she had over 20 outside scholarships. I'll never forget because she ran out of spaces on the sheet. Wow. Over 20 outside scholarships, and none of them were higher than 2,000, 500 a year, 250, 750, 1,000. And so, certainly she spent a lot of time doing that. I'm not suggesting it won't take time, but just being aware that those smaller ones can add up as well.
Great. Now, our next question comes from Darcy, and she writes, this one I think is going to be for you, Jonathan. Now that we have more clarity about the fall semester and my daughter and all classes being online, so I guess that's what's happening at her daughter's college, we have determined she will not be living on campus, which her costs substantially. Since we don't know what the spring semester will look like, can or should we hold out on taking a Parent Plus loan to assist with paying for that semester? If the college does not return to campus in the spring, we will likely not need a loan for this year.
So what I would say in that situation where there's some uncertainty in the spring is that you can take out a loan at any point throughout the academic year. So for this family, if you feel comfortable knowing that you could essentially cover costs for the fall semester from savings or out of pocket or with scholarship, and you're essentially only borrowing for room and board costs, which you wouldn't have for the first semester because she'll be living at home, then certainly you can wait to take out that loan. If you still need to borrow for some funds for the fall, but you don't know how much to borrow for the whole year because if they get back on campus in the spring, then the funds could look very different, or your expenses could look very different than the fall. You really have two options. You could assume you could estimate what the cost would be for the spring with them back on campus and basically borrow that amount. And then if they end up being virtual for the spring as well, you could just reduce the loan. Or you could borrow a loan just for the fall, pay, whatever it is, whatever you had to borrow, and then you could borrow another loan for the spring. And the spring loan could either cover, again, just the virtual experience, or if the room and board expense comes back, then you could borrow to cover that as well. So, kind of a couple different options that families have, but I think the takeaway is that you can borrow at any point throughout the year, and you can also reduce the amount that you need to borrow at any point throughout the year.
That's great. Thank you very much. Our last question has to do with the U-Plan. And so it's a bit of a technical question, but it does lead us into the U-Plan topic, and that is, it comes from Brian, and he writes, "Hi, I started contributing to a U-Plan in 2019. How do I view the percentage of tuition credit my account is entitled to based on my contributions?" So to answer that question, I kind of have to talk about the U-Plan a little bit. And the way that the U-Plan works, it's a prepaid tuition program. So it's different than a 529. It's a savings vehicle, much like a 529, but it's different. It's not invested in the market. And, it's not for, pull out the funds and the earnings and use them for any qualified educational expense. The way it works is you put funds in throughout the year. And at the end of the year, so to speak, which is coming up July 15th, we take all the money that you have in your account and we put that towards a bond. And so the only thing that you have to do is tell us what year or years you want that bond to mature in. And you want to pick one or more of the years that the child is going to be in college for. So depending on how much money is in your account at the time that we purchase those bonds, whatever amount that is, that's going to correspond to a percentage of tuition, this year's tuition, at each participating college or university in Massachusetts. So what that means is if you have $1,000 in maturity year 2030, that's going to buy 10% of tuition at a college that costs $10,000 this year. And when that child goes to that college in 2030, he'll have 10% of 2030's tuition. So you're locking in the percentage of tuition that you purchased. And you can do this, on a yearly basis. The next year would be the next year's tuition percentage. And if you're stacking on maturity, money on in the same maturity year, you'd be adding to your percentage. So to answer your question, you can go on and set up online access to your account and view all sorts of information, how much money you have, how much interest is accrued on that. You can set up an automatic withdrawal from your checking account, and you can go and have access to your statement. So what you'd want to do is go to your documents section, get a look at your annual statement, because the percentages reflect the bond purchase. The bond purchase happens every year, so your percentages aren't finalized until after the bond purchase once a year. So you can go to your annual statement, pull that down, and see what percentage you have purchased at each participating college and university. So that was a lot of information, and this sort of gets us to our next topic. But before I do that, I want to say, if you have any questions, you can email them in at collegeplanning@mefa.org. We need questions for the mailbag, of course. You can also call us at 1-800-449-MEFA. But if you have questions, again, to email to us, the address is collegeplanning@mefa.org. Now we're going to close up the mailbag and head on to our sort of main topic of discussion today, which again is the U-Plan. Now, I can explain to you how the U-Plan works. I just did explain to you sort of how the U-Plan works, but we always find, and it seems to be the case particularly with the U-Plan, that the most effective spokespersons for the program, either one, are the current customers, are the customers who have saved in the U-Plan and benefited in the U-Plan. So towards that end, we thought it would benefit if you heard from somebody who did save and who did benefit from the U-Plan. I spoke with her this afternoon. She is a mom of 2 recent Massachusetts college graduates, so congratulations to her on that. And she used the U-Plan to pay for a portion of those costs. So now let's hear my conversation with Sue Metcalf. Welcome to the podcast, Sue Metcalf.
Thank you.
Sure. One of the things I said before to introduce you was that you are a mother of two recent college graduates, right?
Actually, one, I have a rising junior.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got a rising junior. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations on the graduate and congratulations on the rising junior as well. And you've done a couple of things to save, which is great. I mean, one of the things that we were always trying to get in people's heads is how important it is to save. And if you could just talk a little bit about what you did to save. I know you did a 529 as well as a U-Plan, but if you could talk about what specifically about the U-Plan appealed to you.
Sure. With that, we had actually, we had started the 529 before the U-Plan, but we really hadn't put much money in. This was back in like 2011, 2012. And we thought we need to get going because our daughter would be graduating in 2019 from college. So we thought, we got to go. So my husband had heard about the U-Plan. He just thought he really liked the idea, and so did I, and the fact that this was a plan that you could pay early, and that money was safeguarded in regards to rising tuition in years ahead.
Right.
So that's what we really liked about it.
Right. So it's the only program really that you can use to sort of freeze the cost of college in a sense, because as tuition goes up, so does your value of your percentage.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned too that you had, and I should mention that you wrote a blog for us on this too, and we can attach it to the show notes. I thought it was a fantastic blog, a fantastic piece of writing, and you talked in that a little bit about the hesitancy you had, which I think is very common for people who are comparing plans, the U-Plan and the U-Fund 529 plan, because the U-Plan locks in tuition and fees at a list of participating colleges.
Right.
So people get nervous about what happens if, my child doesn't end up going to one of those colleges.
And that was what I was hesitating about. My husband was like, yeah, let's go for it. And I was like, yeah, let's just wait. I mean, let's just think about this a little bit. And so two things. One is that I looked at the list of the schools, and there's such a wide variety of schools. They're fabulous. So you're not stuck in one type of college or university. And the other thing that probably even more importantly is that I realized that, let's say one of my kids decided to go out of state, we would get that money back. And not only would we get the money back, we'd get interest back. So, I mean, that's so correct. We weren't losing anything, really.
That's correct. Yeah. Yes, and I think some people do get worried about that. Another option that exists is, if you, as you do, you have kids that overlapped in college, so you had two in college at the same time, you can transfer accounts over from one beneficiary to another. So if your older child, for example, didn't go to a participating college, but the younger one did, you could transfer those certificates over and still retain the value of that. Yeah. So when it came time to use the U-Plan, not wanting to go into numbers or anything like that, you found that it worked out well for you.
It did. The kind of the exciting part of the story is that without any pressure from us, because I really didn't want to pressure the kids. I wanted them to have that choice of going out of state. On their own, they just both decided to go to Massachusetts schools. One of them at a small 4-year private school, and the other one a big, large state university. So, yay, that's cool. You all at MEFA are fabulous. You're easy to talk to, knowledgeable, accessible, all those things. And also now with the new website, everything's even more accessible. So it's worked out extremely well for us. And we're still doing
Wow,
it.
I think
We have
that's
2 more years to go.
You got 2 more years to go. That's great.
Yeah.
So hopefully, it'll continue to be as easy. I'm sure it will. You also mentioned something really great in your blog, which is the benefits of using both the 529 and the U-Plan. And I do think people sometimes think they can only do one or the other, but you can actually do both. And there's some good reasons for doing both. And I wonder if you could tell us how you managed it.
Since 2012, we've been putting some money into the 529 a little bit at a time. And with the U-Plan, that was all set. And then when it came to pay, the 529 pays, or let me go back, the U-Plan pays for tuition and fees, whereas the 529 pays for room and board and things like books, extra costs like that. So so the bill, which is the bill paying process and for the colleges isn't that difficult. It's just, we're getting money from one place for one thing and one place for another, one account for another.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when it comes time to actually interact with MEFA or what have you, you find that to be easy?
Yeah, definitely. As I was saying, you all are very easy to get in touch with, and that was I know that there is a website now for the U-Plan, which is relatively new, right? And that makes things even more accessible. I can pull up the account and take a look at it anytime at my own leisure. And I haven't actually asked for payment through the website yet, but I will do that for you next month. So, or the next couple months. Yeah.
And I guess just to wrap it up a bit, is this something that you would recommend or have recommended that anyone take a look at possibly using the U-Plan? Yeah,
definitely. I've been very happy with MEFA. You all, I don't know, I've said this is the third time. Just that you all are very helpful. I mean, I don't feel like I have to go through a lot of hoops to just talk to a real person. I think that's a big deal.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Congratulations on using the plan and it work out for you, and on the success of your kids in college and the success of having them stay close to home too.
Yeah, that's an added bonus, something that I didn't really think about early on, but it's nice to be able to, have lunch with them once in a while. So that's good.
Yeah. So. Well, thank you so much again. Have a good weekend, and hopefully everything continues to go well for you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you. All right. Well, we hope you enjoyed that, everybody. I just want to remind you once again that the deadline for investing in the U-Plan for this year is July 15th. So if you wanted to do that, please call us at 1-800-449-MEFA or visit MEFA.org. Click on the Start Saving tab and then click into U-Plan. You can contribute in a check. You can contribute through the website as well. After July 15th, you won't be able to contribute for this year, but if you wanted to contribute for next year's bond purchase, which is the 2021 bond purchase, you'll be able to do that in the beginning of August. So there'll be a blackout period, so we can purchase the bonds, and then next year's enrollment will be open beginning of August. Now, if you have any questions on the U-Plan or on anything else college related, please call us once again, 1-800-449-MEFA, or email us at collegeplanning@mefa.org. Connect with us on social, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at @MEFATweets. Visit us on LinkedIn. Please visit MEFA.org to see our current slate of webinars that we'll be offering. And of course, please like or subscribe to the podcast So you can do that on Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, wherever you get your podcasts. Other than that, that's it for me, Jonathan.
Jonathan, always great, good show, and yeah, we'll do it again soon. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for listening.